Hi everyone, I am your mystery scientist, and I study how birds that live in tidal marshes are adapted to nesting on the ground in an environment that regularly floods. I am studying their existing behavioral and physical characteristics to understand how they will handle increased nest flooding from sea level rise. In terms of the components of my ecosystem that I focus on, I study birds, including the salt marsh sparrow, seaside sparrow, willet, and clapper rail, and the vegetation that they use in this habitat. Birds are an incredibly diverse group of organisms exhibiting an array of interesting behaviors and physical traits. They do a phenomenal job of adapting to habitats, including being found in all 7 major continents. So birds are a fascinating group of organisms to study. In terms of how I complete my research, I complete both observational studies and field research experiments. To study how my birds successfully nest in marshes, I find nests, check them every few days, measure aspects of their nest structure using a ruler, and determine how and why a nest failed or successfully fledged out chicks. To study where each species of bird puts its nest in the marsh, I measure vegetation traits at nests and at random locations in the marsh using a ruler and a 1 meter squared quadrat. I also experimentally test which nest structural traits keep eggs in nests during these nest flooding events by placing 3D printed eggs that I've created that mimic the shape, size, and mass of existing eggs into nests that have already failed or fledged. And then I flood those inactive nests with seawater, and I count how many eggs have flooded out, and I relate that to the structural components of that exact nest. I also study how adults and chicks of my bird species behaviorally respond to when their nests flood with seawater during high tide events. To do this, I placed ghost hunting cameras, or infrared augmented cameras, on nests to record their actions. The reason I have to use this special kind of camera is because these flooding events tend to occur at night, and currently they occur during the new moon stage of the lunar cycle, which is when the moon is emitting no light, so it is completely dark outside. In terms of how my research helps to contribute to climate change research and understanding, essentially, an incredibly important question for research at this point in time is how species will respond to climate change. So my research attempts to understand how species are already adapted, how my species are already adapted to their nest flooding at high tide events, to help us understand how my species will respond to increased nest flooding from sea level rise over time. Understanding how much flexibility wild species have to respond to climate change is essential for us to know how and when they will be impacted, and as a result, how we can help them. In terms of next steps for my research, my findings will help state and federal managers manage salt marsh habitats to protect these bird species, especially the salt marsh sparrow, which is a species that is rapidly declining currently from sea level rise. In terms of my parting words for all of you, my favorite book when I was a child was The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. The Lorax is about a man arriving in a magical forest where the animals sing and dance, and this man starts a clothing company that requires cutting down the trees to make his product. The Lorax, a beaver-like animal, appears and warns the man to stop, or else he will wind up destroying the entire forest. The man ignores the Lorax's pleas, and eventually he does destroy the entire forest, and all of the animals that live there must find a new place to live and leave. At the end of the story, there's a tombstone that says the word "unless." The old man who once tore down the forest states that unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing will get better. It will not. This sentiment has always stayed with me as our earth has continued to deteriorate as I've grown up. Unless someone like me cares a whole awful lot, nothing will get better. So I will always care, and I will always work on making things better on my home planet. This is my Earth. This is our Earth. I love our planet. It is the most beautifully diverse place with the most fascinating animals and wildlife and plants that I could have ever dreamed up evolving. It's a wonderful place, and I will always work to protect it and keep it the way it should be. And I challenge you to do this too. Thanks.